The Great Hall of the Galactic Concord was filled with beings from 100 different worlds. Some had scales, some had fur, some floated in tanks of strange liquids. They had been meeting like this for thousands of years, long before humans ever looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the central platform. She was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes. Behind her, a hologram showed images of a dying world. The Sindari people were being pushed from their homes by the Vethkai Dominion. Their cities were burning. Their children were starving. "We ask the Concord to intervene," Elena said. Her voice was calm but passionate. "The Sindari have done nothing wrong. They simply exist on land the Vethkai want. This is not war. This is genocide." A rumbling laugh came from the Krethen section. The Krethen were massive creatures, twice the height of humans, with 4 arms and skin like stone. Their representative, a scarred warrior named Thexakal, leaned forward. "The humans speak of intervention again," he said. "Tell me, Ambassador, how many of your soldiers will you send? How many worlds will you burn in response?" Elena kept her composure. "We propose sanctions, economic pressure, diplomatic isolation. There are ways to stop violence without becoming violent ourselves." More laughter filled the hall, not just from the Krethen, but from dozens of species. The sound echoed off the ancient walls. "This is why no one fears humanity," Thexkal said. "You have the ships, you have the weapons. Your industrial worlds could build fleets to match any power in the galaxy. And yet you talk of sanctions." He shook his massive head. "You are the galaxy's gentle giants, all power and no teeth." Elena wanted to respond, but she knew it would change nothing. For 80 years, humanity had been part of the Galactic Concord. For 80 years, they had tried to show a different way. And for 80 years, the elder races had laughed at them. The vote failed. The Sindari would receive no help. Elena returned to her ship feeling tired and old. Back on Earth, Fleet Admiral Marcus Chen watched the recording of the session. He was a tall man with a soldier's bearing, though he had never wanted to be a soldier. His office overlooked the Pacific Ocean, where the sunset painted the water in shades of gold and red. "They still don't understand us," said his aide, a young officer named James. "No," Chen agreed. "They don't. Maybe they never will, sir." Chen turned from the window. On his desk sat a sealed folder marked with a single word: Prometheus. He had never opened it. He prayed he would never have to. "When humanity first reached the stars," Chen said slowly, "we made a choice. We had seen what we were capable of. We had fought world wars. We had built weapons that could end all life on Earth. We had looked into the darkness inside ourselves." He picked up the folder, feeling its weight. "And we decided to be better. Not because we were weak, not because we couldn't be monsters, but because we chose not to be." James nodded. "The other species don't know about Prometheus, do they?" "No. And I hope they never learn." Chen put the folder back down. "Because the day we open this, we become everything we swore we would never be again." Across human space, life continued as normal. On Mars, children played in domed cities. On the orbital stations of Jupiter, families watched ships come and go. On 100 colony worlds, people built homes and planted gardens and dreamed of peaceful futures. The colony ship New Horizons was the pride of human expansion. It was 3 kilometers long, a flying city carrying 2.3 million people to a new world. Among them were scientists and farmers, teachers and engineers. There were 400,000 children on board, the largest group ever sent to establish a new colony. Captain Sarah Morrison stood on the bridge as they approached the Kepler 442 system. She was a veteran of 20 years in space, but she had never commanded anything this important. "Entering the system now," her navigator reported. On the view screen, a beautiful blue-green world appeared. Kepler 442b. They had chosen it carefully. The air was breathable. The water was clean. The land was fertile. It would be humanity's furthest settlement, a new beginning at the edge of known space. "It's perfect," Sarah whispered. Below decks, the colonists were waking from cryosleep. Parents hugged children. Friends laughed together. They had all volunteered for this journey, knowing they would never see Earth again. But they didn't mind. They were pioneers, carrying humanity's dreams to a new world. Sarah opened a channel to Earth. The message would take weeks to arrive. but she wanted to share this moment. This is Captain Morrison of the New Horizons. We have arrived at Kepler 442. Beginning orbital surveys now. Initial readings are better than expected. This world is beautiful. We can see forests and oceans and mountains that touch the clouds. The children are already asking when they can go outside. She smiled at the camera. We're going to build something wonderful here. A city of peace, far from the conflicts of the galaxy. A place where our children can grow up without fear. This is what humanity is meant to do. Not to conquer, not to destroy, but to build and grow and reach for the stars. She ended the transmission and returned to her duties. There was so much work to do. Landing sites to survey, resources to map, a whole world to explore. The New Horizons sent regular updates over the following weeks. The colony site was chosen. The first structures were built. Children ran through alien grass for the first time, laughing at the strange insects and the purple flowers. Then the transmission stopped. At first, no one worried. Technical problems were common at such distances, but days passed with no contact. Then weeks. Earth sent a message asking for a status update. No response came. Ambassador Vasquez was in another Concord session when she received the news. A cold feeling settled in her stomach. She excused herself and rushed to the communications center. Nothing? She asked. Nothing, Ambassador. Complete silence. She contacted Admiral Chen immediately. His face was grave when he answered. I'm sending the Vigilant, he said. They're our fastest ship in that sector. They'll reach Kepler 442 in 3 days. What do you think happened? Chen was quiet for a moment. I don't know. But I have a bad feeling about this. Elena spent those 3 days unable to sleep. She kept thinking about the children. 400,000 children sent to build a better future. Surely nothing bad could happen to so many innocents. The universe couldn't be that cruel. On the third day, the Vigilant arrived at Kepler 442. On the fourth day, Admiral Chen called an emergency meeting of Earth's leadership. His face was pale. His hands were shaking. In 20 years of military service, he had never looked so broken. What did they find? The president asked. Chen couldn't speak. He simply played the footage. The room fell silent. Then someone began to cry. Then someone else. Within minutes, strong men and women who had faced every challenge the galaxy could offer were weeping like children. Because what the Vigilant found was not a colony. It was a graveyard. And somewhere in the depths of space, the Vethkai Dominion was celebrating. They had sent a message to the gentle giants, a message written in the blood of 2 million innocents. They thought humanity would mourn and do nothing. They were very, very wrong. Captain David Okonjo of the UES Vigilant had served in the Earth Fleet for 15 years. He had seen combat. He had lost friends. He thought he understood what death looked like. He was wrong. The Vigilant dropped out of hyperspace expecting to find a communications problem. Maybe a damaged relay station. Maybe a solar flare that disrupted their signals. These things happened on the frontier. Instead, they found hell. The colony site was visible from orbit, not because of the buildings or the landing pads. Those were burned. What was visible from orbit were the bodies. The Vethkai had arranged them in patterns. Geometric shapes stretching across kilometers of land. Circles and triangles and symbols that meant nothing to humans, but everything to the killers. They had wanted this to be seen from space. Get me a landing team, David ordered. His voice was steady, but his hands were gripping his chair so hard his knuckles had turned white. Sir, are you sure? There might still be hostile forces down there. Get me a landing team, now. They landed near what had been the colony's main square. The smell hit them first, then the sight, bodies everywhere. Men and women who had come to build a new world. Farmers and scientists and teachers, all dead. But that wasn't the worst part. The Vethkai had taken their time. They had not simply killed, they had tortured. They had made examples, and they had recorded everything. Medical officer Dr. Lisa Chen was the first to find the children's section. She had 2 kids of her own back on Earth. She made it 3 steps into the area before she fell to her knees and screamed. The children had been killed last. The forensic evidence was clear. They had been gathered together and forced to watch as their parents died. Then, one by one, they had been executed. The youngest victim they found was 8 months old. David walked through the ruins in silence. His soldiers followed, many of them crying openly. These were hardened military personnel, trained for the worst the galaxy could offer. They wept like lost children. In the center of the massacre, they found a data terminal. It was still active. The HFY had left it on purpose. A message was waiting. The image showed a HFY commander. The HFY were tall, thin creatures with 4 eyes and mouths full of needle-sharp teeth. This one wore the marks of high rank and had a necklace made of human finger bones. "Greetings to the Galactic Concord," the commander said, "and greetings especially to humanity. You have spoken loudly about protecting the weak. You have criticized the strong for doing what nature demands. You have called us murderers and monsters." The commander smiled, showing all his teeth. "Let this colony be a lesson. Compassion is weakness. Mercy is foolishness. The strong take what they want, and the weak exist only to serve or die. Humanity has proven itself weak. You are prey playing at being predators." The message ended. David stood perfectly still for a long moment. Then he turned to his communications officer. "Send everything to Earth. Everything. The footage, the bodies, the patterns, the message. All of it." "Sir, this is... People will see this. Families will see this." "Yes, they will." The transmission reached Earth 16 hours later. By order of the president, it was broadcast on every channel, on every world, on every station in human space. Nothing was hidden. Nothing was softened. Humanity saw exactly what had been done to their children. For 3 days, Earth was silent. No government statements, no military responses, no diplomatic protests. The Galactic Concord waited nervously for humanity's response. The HFY waited eagerly, expecting tears and hand-wringing and useless speeches about peace. Neither got what they expected. On the 4th day, the United Earth Parliament convened behind closed doors. Every representative was present. The session lasted 12 hours. The vote was unanimous. President Amara Okonkwo was a grandmother. She had 3 children and 7 grandchildren. She had spent her entire political career advocating for peace. She had won her election, promising to strengthen diplomatic ties with other species. When she stepped up to address the Galactic Concord via quantum link, she was not the same woman who had made those promises. "Members of the Concord," she began. Her voice was calm and controlled, almost pleasant. "For 80 years, humanity has been part of your community. For 80 years, we have advocated for peaceful resolution to conflicts. We have offered aid to suffering worlds. We have built hospitals for the sick and schools for the poor. We have believed, truly believed, that kindness was the highest virtue." She paused and looked directly into the camera. "We were naive." The Concord chamber was completely silent. Even the Crethin, who loved to mock human speeches, said nothing. 4 days ago, the HFY Dominion murdered 2.3 million human civilians. Among them were 400,000 children. The youngest was 8 months old. They were tortured. They were arranged in patterns for our cameras to find. They were made into a message. Amara's voice remained steady, but something cold had entered her eyes. The message was this: humanity is weak. Our mercy makes us prey. Our compassion makes us victims. The HFY believed they could slaughter our innocence, and we would do nothing but cry. She leaned forward slightly. They were wrong. A murmur went through the Concord chamber. For 80 years, we chose to be civilized. We chose restraint. We chose mercy. You mistook this for weakness. You saw gentle giants and thought us toothless. You saw a species that refused to be cruel and assumed we couldn't be. She straightened. Let me be clear about something. Humanity has always had teeth. We simply chose not to use them. We built a society on the ashes of world wars and nuclear terror. We looked into the darkness of our own souls, and we saw what we were capable of. We chose to be better. That was a gift we gave to the galaxy, a gift you have thrown back in our faces. Her next words were spoken slowly, each one landing like a hammer blow. The gift is now withdrawn. Even the floating delegates in their liquid tanks seemed to hold their breath. The Prometheus protocols are now active. All humanitarian missions are canceled. All peace treaties are suspended. All military restrictions are lifted. She looked into the camera one final time. For 80 years, we tried to be the better species. For 80 years, we offered you our best selves. You answered with the blood of our children. President Amara Okonkwo, grandmother of 7, lifelong advocate for peace, spoke her final words to the galaxy. Now we stop being civilized. The transmission ended. In the Concord chamber, no one moved. No one spoke. The Crethan representative, who had mocked humanity so many times, slowly sat down. His stone face was unreadable, but his 4 hands were trembling. Because for the first time in galactic history, someone had seen past humanity's gentle smile. And what they saw behind it terrified them. The galaxy had always known humanity was powerful. They had factories that could build ships in weeks. They had weapons that could crack moons. They had a population of 50 billion spread across 100 worlds. But power without willingness to use it was meaningless. And humanity had never shown any willingness. They talked about peace. They offered aid. They built hospitals instead of fortresses. The elder races had watched this for 80 years and concluded that humans were simply too soft for the realities of galactic existence. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Admiral Marcus Chen stood in the command center of Earth's military headquarters. Around him, screens showed images that no outside species had ever seen. Hidden shipyards in the Oort cloud, the frozen outer reaches of the solar system, factory stations buried inside asteroids. Secret bases on moons that official records said were uninhabited. How long until the Shadow Fleet is ready? The president asked. 48 hours, Chen replied. Though ready might not be the right word. They've been ready for decades. We've just never activated them. The Shadow Fleet, humanity's greatest secret. For every ship in their official navy, there were 3 more hidden in the darkness between stars, built in secret, maintained by automated systems, waiting for a day that everyone hoped would never come. That day had come. What about the protocols themselves? Amara asked. Chen pulled up a document on the main screen. It was old, dating back to humanity's first contact with alien life. The founders of the Earth government had created it after seeing how the galaxy really worked. They had hoped it would never be used. The Prometheus protocols are a complete restructuring of human society for total war, Chen explained. Every factory switches to military production. Every citizen becomes eligible for service. Every resource is directed toward a single goal. Victory, Amara said quietly. No, Chen shook his head. Annihilation. The protocols weren't designed for winning wars. They were designed for ending species. The room was silent. For 80 years, our intelligence services studied every conflict in galactic history, every genocide, every extinction event. We learned how the Crethan eliminated the Hollow Worlds. We studied how the Vethkai broke the Sindri resistance. We analyzed 1,000 years of alien cruelty. He looked at the president. And we systematized it, made it more efficient, more complete. The protocols contain the combined knowledge of every atrocity ever committed in this galaxy, refined and improved by human engineering. One of the generals spoke up. Sir, with respect, are we sure we want to do this? Once we start down this path, there is no going back, Chen finished. I know. Believe me, I know. He turned to face the room. I have spent my entire career praying we would never need these plans. I helped design many of them, and they have given me nightmares for 20 years. But they murdered our children. They arranged their bodies in patterns for us to find. They laughed while they did it. His voice hardened. So yes, I am sure. Across human space, the transformation began. On Mars, the great factories that had built colony ships and trading vessels went dark. When they restarted, they were producing warships. On Earth, voluntary enlistment centers opened. They expected thousands. Millions came. Old men who remembered the world wars of ancient history. Young women who had lost family on Kepler 442. Parents and grandparents and children barely old enough to serve. Every human alive had seen the footage. Every human alive wanted vengeance. But the Vethkai didn't know any of this. Their spies and informants reported normal activity. Some increased military movement, but nothing unusual. Humanity seemed to be doing exactly what the Vethkai expected, mourning and complaining and demanding justice through diplomatic channels. They had no idea about the Shadow Fleet. 3 weeks after the massacre, the Galactic Concord received a request for an emergency session, A human ambassador was coming to address the assembly. The Vethkai representative smiled. This would be entertaining. More tears and threats and empty words. The ambassador who arrived was not Elena Vasquez. She had resigned, unable to continue representing a species that intended to do what humanity was about to do. The new ambassador was a man named Viktor Volkov. Viktor was tall and thin, with a face that rarely showed emotion. He had spent his career in psychological warfare and intelligence. He understood how to break minds and spirits. And he smiled often, though the smile never reached his cold gray eyes. He stepped onto the central platform and looked around the chamber. Every species was represented. Many were nervous. Some were curious. The Vethkai were amused. "Honored members of the Concord," Victor began. His voice was pleasant, almost friendly. "I bring greetings from Earth and from the United Human Government." "Get on with it," the Vethkai representative called out. "Tell us how angry you are. Demand justice. Threaten sanctions. We've heard it all before." Victor's smile widened slightly. "You misunderstand the purpose of my visit. I'm not here to demand anything. I'm here to inform you of what is about to happen." He pressed a button on his podium. A hologram appeared, showing a star map. The Vethkai territory was highlighted in red. "In approximately 6 hours, human forces will enter Vethkai space. We will begin with their border worlds. We estimate complete sterilization will take roughly 48 hours per planet." The chamber erupted in noise. "Sterilization?" someone shouted. "You can't do that," another voice called. Victor waited for the noise to die down. "We can. We will. And nothing in this chamber can stop us." The Vethkai representative stood, all four of his eyes blazing with anger. "This is madness. The Concord will not allow—" "The Concord will do nothing," Victor interrupted calmly, "because the Concord did nothing when our children were being murdered. You sat in these comfortable chairs and debated procedure while 400,000 children screamed for parents who were already dead." His smile disappeared. "You taught us that compassion is weakness, that kindness is foolishness, that the only law in this galaxy is power." He spread his arms wide. "Congratulations. We have learned, and we are very good students." He turned to leave, then paused. "One more thing. Any species that offers aid or shelter to the Vethkai will be considered an enemy of humanity. And we have enough ships for everyone." He walked out without looking back. The chamber remained frozen for a long moment. Then slowly the representatives began to leave. Many were rushing to contact their home worlds. Some were making calculations, wondering if they had ever offended humanity, ever given the humans a reason to add them to the list. Only the Crethan representative remained seated. Thexkal, who had mocked humanity so many times, stared at the empty podium. "Gentle giants," he whispered to himself. "We called them gentle giants." He began to laugh, but there was no humor in the sound. 6 hours later, the first human fleet crossed into Vethkai space. The border world of Vethkar Prime had 3 billion inhabitants. 12 hours later, it had none. The war had begun, and humanity had no intention of stopping. The Vethkai had ruled their corner of the galaxy for 2,000 years. They had conquered dozens of species. They had destroyed worlds that refused to submit. They had built an empire on fear and cruelty, and they believed no one could challenge them. That belief lasted approximately 3 weeks. The first phase of humanity's campaign was not what anyone expected. There were no great battles, no heroic last stands, no opportunities for the Vethkai to prove their warrior spirit. Instead, there was simply death. Human ships would enter a system. They would deploy a series of small satellites around the target world, and then they would leave. The satellites would activate a few hours later. The Vethkai called them silence machines. They broadcast a frequency that disrupted all Vethkai technology. Ships couldn't launch. Communications failed. Weapons wouldn't fire. Then the biological agents would be released. Humanity had studied alien physiology for decades. They knew exactly how each species breathed, how their blood carried oxygen, how their cells reproduced. The agents were designed specifically for Vethkai biology. They worked quickly and efficiently. A population of billions would be dead within hours. The infrastructure remained intact. The buildings still stood. The power stations still functioned. Only the Vethkai were gone. And on every world, humanity left the same message: broadcast on repeat across all frequencies. Remember Kepler 442. The HFY High Command responded with fury. They gathered their fleets for a counterattack. They would meet the humans in battle and crush them. They would show these soft creatures what real warriors could do. The battle lasted 4 minutes. Human weapons technology had advanced far beyond what they had shown the galaxy. Officially, their ships carried standard plasma cannons and missile systems. Unofficially, they had spent 80 years developing weapons that would never be used, unless they were needed. They were needed now. The HFY fleet didn't even manage to fire a shot. They were torn apart by weapons that existed only in theoretical physics papers. Reality itself seemed to bend around human ships, turning HFY vessels inside out or simply erasing them from existence. After the battle, Admiral Chen received a message from the HFY High Command. They wanted to negotiate. He didn't respond. The commander sent another message, offering complete withdrawal from all disputed territories. No response. A third message arrived, promising massive reparations and the execution of everyone responsible for Kepler 442. Silence. Finally, a message came from the supreme leader of the HFY Dominion himself. He appeared on screen, his 4 eyes wide with something his species had not felt in centuries, genuine fear. "What do you want?" he asked. "Tell us what you want. We will give you anything. Territory, resources, slaves. Whatever price you demand, we will pay it." Admiral Chen finally responded. He appeared on screen, his face expressionless. "We don't want anything from you," he said simply. "Then why? Why won't you stop?" "Because you killed our children." Chen's voice was perfectly calm. "You tortured them and arranged their bodies for us to find. You sent a message telling us we were weak because we showed mercy." He leaned forward slightly. "There is no negotiation. There is no surrender. There is no payment that will satisfy us. You wanted to teach humanity a lesson about the galaxy's true nature. Congratulations. We learned. Now we're teaching you one in return." The transmission ended. The campaign continued. Human forces swept through HFY space like a wildfire. World after world fell silent. The great cities that had stood for thousands of years became empty monuments to a dead civilization. The HFY fought back where they could. They tried ambushes and traps and guerrilla tactics. Nothing worked. Human intelligence seemed to know their plans before they made them. Human ships appeared exactly where they were needed. Human soldiers showed no fear, no hesitation, no mercy. Because there was no mercy left in them, the soldiers who landed on HFY worlds wore cameras that broadcast back to Earth. Humanity watched. They saw the empty cities and the silent streets. They saw the bodies being removed and the buildings being cleaned. And no one looked away. Back on Earth, some voices began to call for restraint. Religious leaders spoke of forgiveness. Philosophers warned about becoming the monsters they fought. A few brave politicians stood up in Parliament and asked if humanity hadn't gone far enough. President Okonkwo listened to them all. Then she played the footage from Kepler 442. The recording of children screaming. The images of their bodies arranged in those terrible patterns. "When I see that footage," she said, "I feel nothing but cold determination. The day I stop feeling that way, I will resign. But not today." The campaign continued. 3 months after it began, human forces reached the HFY homeworld. It was a beautiful planet, covered in blue oceans and purple forests. 12 billion beings lived there, the heart of an empire that had terrorized the galaxy for 2,000 years. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the planet rotate below them. "Sir," his aide said, "we're receiving a transmission from the planet. They're surrendering unconditionally." Chen nodded slowly. "And sir, they're asking if we can spare the children. They say the children weren't responsible for Kepler 442. They're begging us to show mercy." The bridge was silent. Every officer remembered the footage. Every one of them had seen the bodies of human children arranged for cameras. Chen was quiet for a long moment. "Our children didn't do anything either," he said finally. "They were just born human. That was their only crime." He turned to his weapons officer. "Begin the operation." The homeworld fell on the anniversary of the Kepler 442 massacre. Humanity had marked the date deliberately. They wanted the galaxy to remember. When it was over, the HFY Dominion no longer existed. Not as a government, not as a military power, barely as a species. A few million survivors scattered on refugee ships, fleeing to the edges of known space. Some would survive, most would not. Humanity made no effort to hunt them down, but they also made no effort to help them. The war was over, but humanity was not finished teaching lessons. In the weeks that followed, two other aggressive species suddenly dissolved their militaries and requested protectorate status under human authority. They had watched what happened to the Vethkai. They had no desire to be next. The Galactic Concord was reorganized. Humanity didn't claim leadership. They didn't need to. Their presence alone was enough. When human representatives spoke, everyone listened. When they voted, the vote passed. And everywhere the same question was whispered. What had happened to the gentle giants? Where had the kind and peaceful humans gone? The answer was simple. They had been murdered on a colony world called Kepler 442. And what had risen in their place was something the galaxy had never seen before. A species with no limits, no restraints, no conscience. A species that had learned exactly the lesson the galaxy wanted to teach. Now everyone was afraid of the students. 5 years had passed since Kepler 442. The galaxy was quiet now, not peaceful exactly. Fear is not the same as peace, but it was quiet. No one challenged humanity. No one raided their shipping lanes. No one made jokes about gentle giants anymore. Admiral Marcus Chen, now fleet commander of all human forces, stood in the memorial garden on Kepler 442. The planet had been reclaimed, not as a colony but as a monument. The bodies had been buried properly. Markers stood in rows that stretched to the horizon. 2.3 million names carved in stone. He visited every year on the anniversary. He stood in silence and remembered what had been lost. A young officer approached him, Lieutenant James Morrison, named after his Aunt Sarah, who had captained the New Horizons. He had been born after the massacre, part of a generation that grew up in its shadow. "Sir, I have to ask you something." Chen didn't turn around. "Go ahead." "Was it worth it?" The old admiral was quiet for a long moment. The wind blew across the memorial stones, carrying the scent of flowers that humans had planted to honor their dead. "That depends on what you mean by worth it," Chen finally said. "We won. We destroyed our enemies. No one will ever attack human civilians again. Isn't that victory?" Chen turned to look at the young man. James was idealistic, determined. He had joined the fleet because he wanted to protect humanity. He believed completely in what they had done. "Let me tell you a story," Chen said. "Before the war, I was a different man. I believed in diplomacy, in negotiation, in finding ways to resolve conflicts without bloodshed. I used to argue with my colleagues who wanted stronger military responses. I told them we should be better than our enemies." He looked back at the graves. "Then I saw what they did here, and something inside me changed. Broke, maybe. I still remember the first order I gave to destroy a Vethkai world. I expected to feel sick, to feel doubt, to question whether we were becoming the monsters we hated." "What did you feel?" "Nothing." Chen's voice was flat. "I felt nothing, and that's what I lost. The ability to feel mercy, the capacity for forgiveness. Whatever part of my soul could look at another living being and see something worth saving." James was silent. "We won, Lieutenant. We protected humanity. We ensured that no one will ever again mistake our kindness for weakness. But the cost," he shook his head, "we became exactly what we swore we would never be. We proved that humans can be just as monstrous as any species in the galaxy. Maybe more so." "Do you regret it?" Chen thought about the question for a long time. "Every day," he finally said. "And I would do it again. That's the curse we carry now. We can never go back to who we were. The gentle giants are dead. They died here, with the children." On Earth, former President Amara Okonkwo sat in her garden, watching her great-grandchildren play. She had retired after the war, unable to continue leading a species that had done what humanity did. The official reason was health concerns. The real reason was that she couldn't look at herself in the mirror anymore. A journalist had come to interview her, the last interview she would ever give. "Madam President, looking back, how do you view the decisions you made?" Amara watched a little girl chase a butterfly across the lawn. The girl was 4 years old, the same age as many of the children who died on Kepler 442. I made the only choices I could make, she said. When they killed our children, something had to be done. Something terrible and final. Otherwise, we would have been victims forever. But the scale of the response? Many have called it genocide. Yes, that's exactly what it was. Amara's voice was calm, accepting. We committed genocide. We murdered billions. We destroyed an entire civilization. And I gave the order to do it. Do you believe it was justified? Amara was quiet for a long moment. Justified? No. I don't think anything can justify what we did. But it was necessary. And there's a difference between those two things. The Vethkai showed us what the galaxy truly was. A place where the strong prey on the weak and compassion is a death sentence. We could either accept that truth and adapt, or we could die. She looked at the journalist. We chose to live. The cost of that choice will haunt humanity forever. But we will be alive to be haunted. Will humanity ever return to its former ideals? The peace and diplomacy you once championed? Amara watched her great-granddaughter pick a flower and bring it to her mother. Such simple innocence, such precious life. We tried to be the good example, she said slowly. We tried to show the galaxy a better way. They answered by murdering our children. So no, we will never be naive again. She paused. But perhaps we can be wise. We have proven that we can be monsters. The question now is whether we can choose not to be. Whether we can use our terrible power responsibly. Whether we can protect the innocent without becoming the very thing that threatened them. The interview ended. The journalist left. Amara sat alone in her garden as the sun set, thinking about all the choices that had led to this moment. 1 year later, a new colony ship launched from Earth, the New Horizons 2, carrying 3 million settlers to a distant star. Unlike its predecessor, it traveled with an escort of warships that could destroy planets. The gentle civilian expedition of the past was gone forever, but someone had painted a mural on the hull, 2 hands reaching toward each other across a field of stars, a reminder of what humanity had once been and what they still hoped to become again someday. Captain David Morrison, brother of Sarah, who died on the first New Horizons, stood on the bridge as they prepared to jump to hyperspace. He recorded the first log entry. This is the New Horizons 2, departing Earth for the Andromeda Reach. We carry with us the hopes of humanity, not the naive hopes of our ancestors who believed the galaxy would reward kindness with kindness, but wiser hopes. He looked out at the stars. We know now what the universe truly is. We know that there are those who would destroy us simply for existing. We know that mercy can be seen as weakness and compassion as an invitation to violence. The escort ships took formation around the colony vessel. Their weapons were armed and ready. But we also know what we are capable of, not just the good, but the terrible. We carry that knowledge with us, a weight that can never be set down. We will never again be innocent. He straightened his shoulders. So we go forward with both the olive branch and the sword. We hope for friends. We prepare for enemies. We offer peace to those who deserve it, and we bring war to those who force it upon us. The jump countdown began. This is humanity. We are not gentle anymore. We are not naive. We have learned the lessons the galaxy wanted to teach us, and we have taught a few lessons of our own. But we still reach for the stars. We still build. We still dream. The ships jump to hyperspace, leaving Earth behind. We are still human, for better and for worse, and we will endure. In the memorial garden on Kepler 442, the wind blew softly through the rows of graves. The flowers swayed gently. The names of the dead stood silent in the fading light. And somewhere among the stars, humanity continued forward, changed forever, but still reaching, still hoping, still human.